Before Hollywood's iron grip of censorship, there was an era where filmmakers dared to bare the raw, the forbidden, and the dangerously honest. The pre-code years, from 1930 to 1934, produced movies so scandalous they rattled moral watchdogs and nearly destroyed careers. Today, we uncover 15 of the most daring films Hollywood desperately tried to erase from memory. 1. The Most Dangerous Game, 1932. Imagine a remote island where the hunter is no longer chasing deer or boar, but people. The Most Dangerous Game takes this premise and drapes it in shadows, sweat, and unsettling sensuality. Released in 1932, this survival thriller wasn't just about action, it was about pushing audiences into uncomfortable territory. The story follows shipwrecked survivors who find themselves in the clutches of Count Zaroff, a man whose passion isn't sport, but the thrill of hunting human prey. What set this apart in the pre-code era was the combination of visceral violence and subtle undertones. The jungle scenes were sweaty, lingering, and deliberately primal, suggesting an almost animalistic tension between predator and prey. Fay Wray, already on her way to Scream Queen fame, delivered a performance of fear and quiet defiance, her vulnerability adding to the film's intensity. Censors bristled at the sadistic overtones, particularly the way Zaroff's obsession with the hunt was framed as both physical and erotic. Critics at the time found it too lurid for comfort, but audiences couldn't look away. The result? An enduring cult status that's only grown with time. Today, it stands as a thrilling reminder of how far filmmakers were willing to go before censorship's curtain fell. 2. The Divorcee, 1930. In an era when women were expected to forgive and forget, The Divorcee dared to show a woman doing neither. Norma Shearer plays Jerry, a wife who, upon discovering her husband's infidelity, responds in kind, an act and emotional rebellion that was shocking for 1930 audiences. This wasn't just implied, it was openly discussed, her choices unapologetically defended. The film didn't simply question marital double standards, it obliterated them. The message was clear: women could play by the same rules as men. This bold stance, wrapped in elegance and sharp dialogue, challenged the very foundation of gender roles in Hollywood storytelling. Censors hated it. The frank acknowledgement of extramarital affairs, female desire, and moral hypocrisy drew the wrath of religious groups and moral watchdogs. The film was later heavily edited for re-releases, softening its sharpest edges. Yet Shearer's performance, paired with the daring script, earned The Divorcee the Academy Award for Best Actress and cemented its legacy as one of the earliest feminist statements in American cinema. 3 on a Match, 1932. What happens when a film crams drug addiction, infidelity, kidnapping, and suicide into a brisk 63 minutes? You get 3 on a Match, one of Warner Brothers' most explosive pre-code dramas. The story follows 3 childhood friends, played by Joan Blondell, Bette Davis, and Ann Dvorak, whose lives diverge in dramatically different directions. Ann Dvorak's character spirals into a nightmare of cocaine addiction, an abusive relationship with a gangster, and ultimately, a tragic act of sacrifice. The drug use is not hinted at. It's shown, raw and unvarnished, in a way that would be impossible just a year later under the code. The film's portrayal of a woman wasting away in the haze of addiction was too much for censors, who condemned it for glamorizing vice. But it's that unflinching realism that makes it unforgettable today. 3 on a Match wasn't afraid to show the underbelly of the American dream, and it did so with a speed and sharpness that still stings. 4. Scarface, 1932. Before Al Pacino's 1983 gangster epic, there was Howard Hawks' Scarface, a film so explosive in its time that censors tried to bury it altogether. Inspired by the real-life reign of Al Capone, this version stars Paul Mooney as Tony Camonte, a ruthless immigrant who claws his way up Chicago's criminal underworld. But this wasn't just a crime story. It was a relentless portrayal of ambition without morality, dripping with violence, greed, and a dangerous charm that made audiences uneasy. The violence was groundbreaking for 1932. Machine gun massacres, brutal shootouts, and an unapologetic body count. What truly pushed it into scandal territory was how it seemed to revel in Tony's rise, presenting him as dangerously magnetic. Even his incestuous obsession with his sister, played by Anne Vorak, was a whispered undercurrent that made censors squirm. The Hays office initially refused to grant it approval, demanding multiple edits. Hawks and producer Howard Hughes fought back fiercely, releasing alternate versions and staging public debates about artistic freedom. Hughes even challenged state censorship boards by daring them to ban it. Many did. Despite the outrage, Scarface became a defining gangster film, influencing everything from The Godfather to Goodfellas. In the pre-code era, it stood as the ultimate example of how crime stories could seduce as much as they warned, a balance that Hollywood would later forbid. 5. She Had to Say Yes, 1933. This Warner Brothers drama tackled a subject Hollywood avoided for decades: the exploitation of working women in corporate America. Loretta Young plays a naive secretary caught in a cruel customer service scheme, where young female employees are expected to entertain important male clients after hours. The film doesn't tiptoe around its theme. It dives in with brutal honesty, portraying men in power as predatory and entitled. For 1933, the idea that business leaders could barter their female staff's dignity for deals was a stinging indictment of workplace culture. Young's character experiences humiliation, coercion, and betrayal, and the narrative makes no attempt to sanitize the emotional toll. In one of the film's most controversial scenes, she is cornered by a drunken client, the camera lingering just long enough to make audiences feel her fear. Critics and moral crusaders were outraged, accusing the film of immorality for even depicting such scenarios. Warner Brothers, however, marketed it as a cautionary tale, claiming it exposed real dangers faced by innocent women. While the studio's motives were likely more about ticket sales than activism, the film remains a fascinating and daring snapshot of the gender politics Hollywood usually kept hidden. Its unapologetic realism made it impossible to ignore, and in the years that followed, no studio would touch similar subject matter until long after the code's grip had loosened. 6. Men in White, 1934. Just months before the production code would be strictly enforced, MGM released Men in White, a medical drama starring Clark Gable as a brilliant young doctor. On the surface, it's about the pressures of hospital life. Beneath, it's one of the most notorious pre-code films because of what it dared to suggest: an illicit romance, a resulting pregnancy, and an implied abortion. Myra Loy plays a sympathetic nurse who becomes romantically entangled with Gable's character, leading to consequences neither anticipated. While the film never explicitly states the word abortion, the implication is unmistakable. A risky move in 1934. Dialogue about a necessary operation and scenes of quiet anguish left little doubt in audience minds. Religious groups, particularly the newly formed Catholic Legion of Decency, condemned the movie outright, claiming it corrupted public morals. Many theaters pulled it entirely, while others only showed heavily edited versions. Yet Men in White remains striking for its compassion. It treated its characters as flawed, human beings caught in difficult situations, refusing to cast moral judgment. That sensitivity, combined with the sheer boldness of its themes, makes it a landmark example of the risks filmmakers were willing to take, right before they were silenced. 7. Gold Diggers. Of 1933. Busby Berkeley's Gold Diggers of 1933 sparkled with lavish musical numbers, dazzling choreography, and cheeky humor, but beneath the glitter lay some of the most suggestive scenes of the pre-code era. The film follows a group of struggling showgirls and their wealthy suitors during the Great Depression and it doesn't shy away from showing how financial survival often intersected with romantic or transactional relationships. One of the most talked-about numbers, Pettin in the Park, flirts shamelessly with the boundaries of 1930s decency. Costumes are sheer, the choreography is loaded with innuendo, and a comedic gag involving metal underwear took risque humor to new levels. In another sequence, chorus girls parade in costumes so revealing that when the code came into force a year later, such scenes were considered unfilmable. What made it scandalous was not just the visual daring, but also the unapologetic message. Women could leverage beauty and charm to survive hard times, and the film treated this with winking approval rather than moral condemnation. Some state censorship boards demanded cuts, others banned it outright. Ironically, Gold Diggers of 1933 also ends with a sobering social commentary. Its Remember My Forgotten Man finale is a haunting depiction of the human cost of the Depression. The mix of escapist glamour and social realism proved Hollywood could be both bold and socially conscious. Until the code shut the door. 8. She Done Him Wrong, 1933. Mae West's She Done Him Wrong wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural earthquake. West plays Lady Lou, a saloon singer with a sharp tongue, a magnetic presence, and a never-ending string of admirers. The plot, set in New York's Bowery District, is thick with conmen, criminals, and suggestive banter. West's mastery of double entendre made the dialogue as provocative as the costumes. Lines like, "Why don't you come up sometime and see me?" were delivered with such playful seduction that audiences knew exactly what was being implied without a single explicit word. Even the wardrobe, figure-hugging gowns and plunging necklines, challenged the era's notions of acceptable screen attire. The Hayes office balked at the script, demanding changes, but West cleverly rewrote dialogue to keep the heat while dodging outright bans. Religious and civic groups called for boycotts, claiming the film glorified immoral behavior, yet the public couldn't get enough. The film's enormous box office success helped save Paramount from bankruptcy, proving that Scandal sold tickets. More importantly, it immortalized Mae West as a symbol of female independence and agency, something the incoming censorship regime would try hard to contain. 9. I'm No Angel, 1933. If She Done Him Wrong ruffled feathers, Mae West's follow-up I'm No Angel set them on fire. Again, she was in full control, writing her own script, shaping her character, and dictating how far she could push the limits. This time she plays Tira, a carnival dancer and lion tamer who uses her charm to climb the social ladder. The film revels in scenes where Tira manipulates men with effortless wit, leaving them dazzled and disarmed. In one scene, she delivers the now famous line, "When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better." The implications were crystal clear, and audiences loved it. The scandal wasn't only in the words, it was in the way West looked directly into the camera, breaking the unspoken wall between actor and viewer, making every viewer feel like they were in on her private joke. Critics accused the film of eroding public morals, while censors fumed over its refusal to punish her for her ambition and desire. Despite the controversy, or perhaps because of it, I'm No Angel became another box office smash. It cemented Mae West's legacy as the woman who single-handedly kept pre-code Hollywood sizzling until the code slammed the brakes on her brand of unapologetic boldness. 10th. Blonde Venus, 1932. Marlene Dietrich was already a Hollywood enigma by the time Blonde Venus hit theaters, but this film cemented her status as a dangerous, intoxicating force. She plays Helen Faraday, a devoted wife and mother who is forced to return to the stage to pay for her husband's medical treatment. But in true pre-code fashion, the story takes a scandalous turn when she becomes entangled with a wealthy playboy, played by Cary Grant. The film's most infamous moment is Dietrich's hot voodoo number, an exotic feathered headdress, shimmering skin, and sultry choreography that was as much about seduction as it was spectacle. In 1932, this was daring beyond measure, but what truly made the movie controversial was its unapologetic exploration of infidelity, female desire, and the moral gray areas of survival. Censors balked at the notion that Helen could engage in an extramarital affair and not face the kind of ruin that the code would soon demand. Religious groups condemned the movie for portraying a woman who uses her without immediate punishment. For them, the problem wasn't just what Helen did, it was that the film invited the audience to sympathize with her. Despite mixed reviews at the time, Blonde Venus stands today as a potent example of the emotional and sensual complexities that pre-code cinema could explore, realities that would vanish from the screen for decades. 11. Mata Hari, 1931. Greta Garbo's Mata Hari was a studio gamble in glamour and danger, and it paid off with box office gold and censorship headaches. Loosely based on the real-life World War I spy, the film portrayed Mata Hari as a dancer-turned-secret agent who seduces military officers to obtain classified information. Garbo's performance drips with sensuality, especially in the opening dance sequence, where she moves with deliberate, hypnotic allure. In 1931, the combination of exoticism, espionage, and implied seduction was enough to have watchdog groups calling for cuts. And cuts they made. By the time the film was reissued under the code, entire scenes were either shortened or removed entirely, including a near-nude sequence of Garbo in a sheer costume. The scandal wasn't limited to physical suggestiveness. Mata Hari's manipulation of men, her unapologetic ambition, and her lack of moral hesitation made her an anti-heroine in an era that demanded women be virtuous or punished. While the ending ultimately delivers retribution, the bulk of the story revels in her cunning. Even in its censored state, Mata Hari remains an intoxicating blend of espionage and sensuality, reminding audiences that Garbo's magnetism could scandalize as effortlessly as it could captivate. 12. The Story of Temple Drake, 1933. If one film could be called the final straw that pushed Hollywood into fully enforcing the production code, The Story of Temple Drake might be it. Based on William Faulkner's controversial novel Sanctuary, the movie follows Temple, a privileged Southern woman played by Miriam Hopkins, whose life spirals after a fateful encounter with a violent gangster. The film shocked audiences by directly addressing violence, a subject Hollywood had only hinted at before. While the act itself is not shown, the implication is unmistakable, and the psychological aftermath is explored with stark honesty. Temple's descent into a life of coerced crime and eventual moral reckoning was unlike anything seen on American screens. Critics accused the film of sensationalism, but others praised it for confronting uncomfortable truths about power, gender, and victimhood. Religious groups, however, were furious, calling it immoral for even touching the subject matter. In many states, the movie was banned outright. By late 1934, the story of Temple Drake was often cited as evidence that Hollywood had gone too far. Ironically, its willingness to depict trauma and survival with complexity is exactly what makes it resonate today, an uncompromising look at the shadows society preferred to ignore. 13. Red-Headed Woman, 1932. If one actress defined unapologetic seduction in pre-code Hollywood, it was Jean Harlow, and Red-Headed Woman may be her most brazen role. Harlow plays Lil Andrews, a secretary who doesn't just want money, she wants the lifestyle, the social standing, and the man to go with it. Her approach? Breaking every moral convention in the book. From the very first scene, Lil's ambition is clear. She's willing to steal her boss away from his wife, and she does it with zero remorse. Throughout the film, she manipulates, flirts, and schemes her way through a series of men, each one bringing her closer to her vision of success. The scandal wasn't just in her methods, it was in the way the film celebrated her cunning. Dialogue drips with innuendo, and Harlow's delivery makes every suggestive line land with playful venom. The Hayes office tried to soften the ending, forcing MGM to tack on a moralistic conclusion. But Harlow's charisma made it impossible for audiences to view Lil as anything other than victorious in spirit. Religious and civic groups called it dangerous, claiming it encouraged women to abandon virtue for material gain. Yet Red-Headed Woman became a box office success, cementing Harlow as Hollywood's ultimate bad girl, a title the code would soon make impossible to reclaim. 14. Babyface, 1933. If there's one film that perfectly encapsulates why the production code was enforced, it's Babyface. Barbara Stanwyck stars as Lily Powers, a woman raised in an abusive environment who learns to use her looks and charm to manipulate men and climb the corporate ladder, literally, floor by floor, from the basement to the executive suite. The scandal was in both the implication and the explicitness. Lily's relationships are transactional, and the film doesn't moralize her for it until studio-mandated reshoots forced a softened ending. The original version, lost for decades, was even more daring, showing Lily unapologetically exploiting a system that exploited her first. Stanwyck's performance is sharp, calculating, and layered with vulnerability, making Lily less of a villain and more of a survivor. The frankness with which the film approached female as a tool of empowerment was unprecedented for Hollywood. After its release, Babyface was cited in industry debates as a prime example of immoral cinema. It remains one of the most infamous pre-code films, and today, the restored cut offers a rare glimpse into a time when Hollywood's leading ladies could be as ruthless as any man on screen. 15. The Public Enemy, 1931. James Cagney's The Public Enemy wasn't just a gangster film, it was a wake-up call for Hollywood. Cagney plays Tom Powers, a bootlegging street thug whose rise through the criminal underworld is as violent as it is magnetic. Audiences had seen crime on screen before, but never with such grit and swagger. The film's most notorious moment, the grapefruit-in-the-face scene with Mae Clarke, became a cultural flashpoint. It was shocking not just for its suddenness, but for its casual cruelty. Combined with the film's raw depictions of murder, betrayal, and underworld politics, it created a realism that unsettled censors. What truly scandalized moral watchdogs was how The Public Enemy portrayed crime as thrilling. Tom Powers is charismatic, funny, and stylish. Even as his actions grow more brutal, the camera lingers on his charm. Though the ending delivers a form of justice, the journey there left many convinced the film glamorized gangsters. Religious groups called for bans, and some cities refused to screen it without cuts. Despite the controversy, or perhaps because of it, it became a defining gangster classic and set the template for countless crime dramas to come. Pre-code Hollywood would never be this unflinching again. These 15 pre-code films didn't just push boundaries, they smashed them. They reveled in moral ambiguity, embraced scandal, and dared to show audiences the world without a filter. As censorship closed in, these movies became both relics and rebels, reminders of a time when Hollywood's greatest sin was telling the truth.